What I would say in terms of going through a transition as a tool is be very careful that you're living in the now, in the present, in today, that you are where your feet are and not in these made up stories in your head. And if you're going to tell yourself a story, you might as well tell yourself a good one, right? You might as well interpret information in a way that serves you and gives you more confidence to show up today.
Hello, and welcome to the Shift Your Day Job podcast. I'm Brittany Cates, your host on this incredible journey of career transformation. Get ready for inspiring stories, valuable insights, and a roadmap to shift your mindset towards a more fulfilling professional life. In each episode, we explore the remarkable journeys of individuals who made a career change, offering motivation, strategies, and the confidence to pursue your dreams. Whether you're feeling stuck, contemplating a change, or just seeking a dose of inspiration, this podcast is your weekly companion. Tune in every Thursday as we uncover the secrets to shifting your day job. Welcome to another episode of the Shift Your Day Job podcast. Before I introduce today's guest, I've got something special to share with you. If you're feeling stuck and overwhelmed in the job search, I know how frustrating it can be to endlessly scroll through job boards only to feel like you're getting nowhere. That's why I created a free mini course to help you shift from confusion to clarity and avoid the one big mistake that may be holding you back. In this training, I'll guide you step by step through the exact strategy you need to make your career transition with confidence. No more second guessing your qualifications or feeling stuck in a cycle of random job searching. You'll learn how to focus on your strengths, align your passions with your next opportunity, and create a job search plan that actually works. By the end of this course, you'll have a clear, actionable roadmap to start landing the career you've always dreamed of without the overwhelm. If you're ready to take action and step into your future, DM me on Instagram at Shift Your Day Job with the word mini course, and I will send you the link to get you started on your journey towards a more fulfilling, aligned career. In today's episode, we're diving into the art of navigating career transitions and unlocking personal growth with Amy Kemp. Amy is a certified habit finder coach, the author of I See You, and a former high school English teacher turned top sales leader and full-time coach. In this conversation, Amy takes us through her inspiring career evolution, sharing how she recognized and overcame deeply ingrained thought habits to create a life aligned with her purpose. Together, we explore the power of self-awareness, the importance of building strong support systems, and practical strategies for tackling resistance through life's transitions. What I especially loved about this conversation was how Amy shared relatable stories from her family and personal experiences. Stories that I think we can all connect with as we navigate our own lives and career journeys. Her vulnerability and honesty make the strategies she shares even more impactful, and I think you'll find her advice not only inspiring, but deeply practical for any transition that you're facing. Amy also gives us a behind-the-scenes look at her book, I See You, offering actionable advice for anyone ready to shift into a more fulfilling chapter, whether that's a new career, personal growth, or embracing change with confidence. This episode is packed with valuable insights and real-life strategies to help you take bold steps toward your dreams. So let's get started and welcome Amy Kemp to the podcast. Hi, Amy. Welcome to the Shift Your Day Job podcast. How are you doing today?
So good. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. I'm excited for you to be here as well. Reading your bio, I am so fascinated in this whole habit finder coaching. And so I know we'll get into that, but I'd love for you to start by sharing your story of your career journey and how it's progressed to where you are today.
Of course. So, first of all, thank you for having me. I love the question, tell me your story. I feel like you tell it a little differently every time when you're thinking about even your own journey. But I think I would love to start. I grew up just outside of Chicago, which I live outside of Chicago now, also just in a different area. And really, as my first professional pursuit became a high school English teacher. Loved kids, loved teaching, but ran into with my very ambitious excited self ran into a principal that was not quite so excited about all of the innovation I wanted to do and it was nearing retirement. And I'm grateful for his lack of enthusiasm now because it's forced me to look for outlets. And so I started a small business on the side, which grew over the next 20, almost 25 years to be my full time work, but also to the point where I was leading the number one sales team in the United States. So over 1,000 people all across the country, really developing leaders and was very energized by the work that I was doing. I did get to a place, however, where there were a few things that happened. And it's interesting when you go through a transition as a leader because you know that transition is not just going to impact you, but all of the people that follow you as well. And I had a couple of things happen at the same time, but one of them being I kept on having conversations with women outside of my work, just in my day to day life. These were high capacity people who were exhausted, overwhelmed. They were isolated. They didn't feel like anyone understood their experience. And I thought, ooh, I should do something. And so I happened to be in Salt Lake City. I was speaking out there at an event. I met with a business coach that I had worked with years before, but we had stayed in touch, still friends. He picked me up from the airport. We went to have dinner. I said, Joe, I keep on having this conversation. And everywhere I go, it's like in a podcast or in a book. And then I go to the store and I see this woman and she's saying the same thing. And he said, I really think you need to take action on this. You need to do something. And he said, we are starting a training to use the Habit Finder assessment on Monday. This is Thursday. And when I tell you that never in my life had I considered this, it was so far from anything I had thought I would ever do. And yet, this tool that he had used and the curriculum that goes along with it had brought about the biggest degree of change in my own work and life. I had the biggest explosion of growth in my business. I had the greatest experience of joy that I'd ever had in doing the work I was doing. And so when he said it, I just thought, yes. I went home, I talked to my husband. It was a very significant financial and time investment. He is amazing and said, every time we've invested in you, it's been worth it. And I started on Monday. It was so crazy. So, what I thought I would do is just lead a couple groups of women through this curriculum, the same people I'd been having these conversations with. And it very quickly grew, outpacing what I ever imagined or dreamed it would become. And so 7 years later, after accidentally starting a company, this is my full-time work. And I work with people using this tool in small groups and one-on-one engagement, really helping them to identify their subconscious habits of thinking that are causing resistance, and then also to replace those habits of thinking uh, with less resistance, with thoughts that allow them to move forward and create whatever it is they're supposed to. So here I am on your podcast. Oh, and I just wrote a book. So the book I just wrote, it's right here in my hands, but it's called I See You and it just published in February. So that is the newest addition to the experience. Very excited about it.
Yeah, very cool. I'm curious when you started this side business, right? You were teaching full time and you're like, I'm not able to do all the things I really want to do in this role. I'm going to do something
Mm,
in my spare time. What was that related to what you're doing now? Or,
mm-mm.
oh, it was a sales team.
Yeah, totally
Okay.
different.
Did you?
However, interesting is that this thing I love to do in leading that sales team is the same thing I'm doing now,
Yeah.
which is the development of people, the get the stuff out of the way that's keeping you from moving forward. And by stuff, all of the thinking, all of the beliefs, all of the, I just call it noise in our heads. Just lower that volume. People are amazing if they aren't interrupted by all the noise.
Yeah.
And so while it was very different and there were other parts of that business that I was also doing, this is a stripped down version of what I've always, even as a teacher, really. It really was just there partnering with kids to help them create and to learn and to move forward. So, yes.
Absolutely. I think that the more experience that we can have in our life, the more opportunity we have to look back and recognize where are the commonalities, right? And it goes along with this idea of I was a teacher as well. I know a lot of teachers, I've heard a lot of teachers saying, I've been doing this for 20 years. I could never do anything else. Or I remember feeling like when I was looking for jobs, anybody take me seriously because I've only ever been a teacher. And it's like getting rid of that limiting belief or that limiting mindset and being like, no, look at all of the things that I do as a teacher that are transferable skills. Or, oh, that thing is the same as this thing over here in this job that I really want to do. And then communicating effectively in a job interview, in a resume, like I do that thing. Like I know how to do that and do it well.
So, also, I think there's this element of I was doing the same thing all along. I was growing inside of me and understanding my worth and value through that entire journey at different levels. And so what happened is I was doing the same thing, but moving myself into spaces where it was more financially beneficial for me to do that thing. There are a million places a person can teach, not just a classroom, right? Again, if the classroom is your place, awesome. But also don't limit yourself. Just like I said, I was always developing people. It didn't have to be just within this one construct. I could do that same work somewhere else. Now, I think sometimes that can feel frustrating because it's like, how am I going to find that place? And so I always just would say to someone, focus on growing. You'll outgrow the place
Yeah.
and you'll find the new thing will show up. I wasn't planning to go through this training. That was not my plan. I was focused on growing me, becoming more, really understanding myself and my gifts, and I was using them. And then those things tend to show up when you're ready. So I definitely would say, don't feel frustrated like you have to go out and figure it out what that next thing is. Just relax on the how. It's okay.
Yeah.
It'll show up when you're ready.
Yes. I love that perspective on it because that's essentially what I try and help my clients with, right? Like, where do you start? You have to start with yourself, right?
Ugh,
You have to learn about you and what you love and where you struggle and what's going to light you up. But I love that piece that you're talking about of just trusting that as you are doing those things, that opportunities will present themselves. And we all, as humans, get wrapped up in the how. It's okay, but how do I do that? And it's hard to go with the flow sometimes.
yeah, absolutely.
I am wondering when you were in that sales role, were you still teaching full time?
Once I quit teaching after 5 years, the business grew really fast. At the time when I met with Joe in Salt Lake City, I was leading the number 1 team in the United States. And I knew, "Oh gosh, this is gonna be a little tricky." I didn't think I was leaving that space at that time either. I had started to feel the feelings of a transition coming on. And by transition, things that I used to love or that were felt like easy to me, I started to just dread them.
Yeah.
And I started to have feelings of, I don't want to do that anymore. And it felt really uncomfortable. I even remember being at certain things where it felt like I was out of my body watching myself at an event. And I was going through the motions, but I wasn't really present there. And I'd never had that experience in my whole life. And I thought, oh, something is going on here. So while I look back and see, there were signs that I was entering a transition, but the transition took about 5 years, really, and it's been really deeply personal, very difficult, and also really important because you need what a transition has for you for the next thing. It brings up everything that needs to be healed. It brings up everything that's holding you back or that may be in opposition to your growth. And so I had a lot of opportunities to experience those things inside of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's important that you mentioned that it was about a 5-year process
Oh,
before the transition was from A to B. And as I'm sure many of our listeners don't want to hear that, I think
yeah.
it's important to realize that not everything is going to happen all at once. And that's okay as long as you are taking the steps that are best for you at that time. And maybe over time, it will result in the thing that you're looking to achieve, the career you're pursuing. And that's great because of all the growth that you will go through in that time period. It'll be invaluable.
Yeah. But a lot of that 5 years too is just empty space where you're not sure it's gonna work out. It doesn't feel certain. On the other side, it's great to tell the story, but in that moment, it reminds me when I'm doing yoga sometimes, if there's a transition between poses and I'm not sure where I'm going, but she's telling me to get out of one, I can just be like, where are we going? I don't wanna until you tell me what's gonna land, I don't wanna move it. But that is part of the transition. There's an element of faith where you're moving your foot through the air and you really aren't sure where it's gonna land and how that's gonna go, or if you're even ready for it. Transitions are something that we don't talk about very much, but they are almost universal that everyone goes through some sort of life professional transition in the course of human existence.
Yeah. What would your advice be because certainty obviously is something that we would always like to have, yet that's not really how life often works. What advice would you give people who are going through a transition and how to manage that?
Don't do it alone. This is the time when you hire the coach or join the coaching group or invest in the program. You need a neutral voice that has no stakes in the game. I could not talk to my husband about it. He was like, "What are you doing? You are at the top of the mountain. Why are we leaving the mountain? Pays the bills." He had a stake in the game. The people I was leading, it was inappropriate for me to talk to them about it. Even my friends weren't fully capable because they weren't invested in the other story as well. I absolutely had to have a safe space where I could process through a lot of the emotions that were coming up. I had to grieve. I had to be angry. I had to question myself. I had to have a safe place where I could process what was happening inside of me. And really, also, I would say so, one, don't do it alone. And do not apologize for paying for that space to be held for you, even when it feels counterproductive. I spent more money and time in coaching during those 5 years. I've always invested heavily in those, but that was a lot. I really needed it. So
Yeah.
don't apologize or be fearful that it's worth it, particularly because I had no guarantees. And second, I would just say, don't rush it. Like, the way you just said it, it was 5 years. Can we be done? Can we please be done and just finished with this? There's a part of our brain that is wired to want the beginning, the middle, and the end of the story. But I would also say what the transition has for you, you need for the next chapter. And if you rush through it, you will not own it. You will not be ready for that new thing. And so do not rush, even in the moments where you do feel deeply uncomfortable and scared. Stay in it. Just stay in it for all of it and all that it has for you.
Yeah. Thank you. That's beautiful and great advice. Can you share with us some tools that you used in the moments where it did get challenging that helped you stay with it?
I think I'm actually just working on a blog post that is about the roller coaster of catastrophe. So I think I'd love to talk a little bit about that, just in the sense of tools, more of just an awareness. Maybe you've experienced this feeling where you get a very small piece of information. You get an email at 5 o'clock on Friday. You're just leaving the office from your boss, and it says, I'd love to see you on Monday morning, first thing. And you buy a ticket and hop on the roller coaster of catastrophe, replaying every meeting that you've been in with her for the last month, going over potential errors that you made in the project you just completed. And by Sunday night, after all of your ruminating, you're freshening up your resume, sure that you're not going to have a job. And then you go to her office on Monday and she says, hey, you did a great job on the presentation on Friday. I just didn't get a chance to tell you. And you've essentially wasted the whole weekend and been distracted and not present at your kid's soccer game and not there for the dinner you shared with your partner. And because you're playing in these scenarios of catastrophe. Also, I think our brains can go to fantasy. So we can swing from the worst case scenario, or we can live in these made up worlds that we create. I'll tell you a story about this that just this is what I'm actually writing about for this blog post. But when I published my book, a lot of people don't know that there's a few month time period where you can pre-order books, but most people don't know that during that time, the author can't see how many books have sold until the day the book is published. So the day it is actually published, then you have access to the dashboard where you can see all the numbers. So for me, starting in December, people were pre-ordering my book and they were telling me there was a lot of excitement. The Amazon rankings were really good. And in my mind, I had this fantasy of how I came up with this number of how many books were being sold. And almost daily, I was envisioning myself opening my computer and seeing this number on the screen and feeling like I am rocking this authorship journey. I'm amazing. This is so great. I'm so glad I did this. And I'm envisioning it. This is fantasy. This is not real. I have no data. I've never published a book. I don't even know where I got the number from. Like I just made it up, right?
Yeah.
But I have attached all sorts of feelings to this number. I have attached success, happiness. This whole project was a success because of this number in my fantasy world. So the day comes, I get on this call with a person from the publishing company who was lovely, and she starts going through the screen and how you log in, and she pulls up the page that has the number. And it was about a third of the number that I had thought it was. And it felt like I was being attacked by a bear. My heart started racing. I started sweating. I felt this warm rush of adrenaline coursing through my body, which there is like a physiological reaction to these things. And I did not hear one word that woman said for the rest of the call. She was talking and she was lovely, not there.
Right.
I took a ride from fantasy back to catastrophe.
Yeah.
So I went from this fantasy world that I had created and lived in my head. And then I went to this is a failure. Why did I do this? This was a bad idea. I don't know what I was thinking. Blah, blah, blah. Ugh. I went into the kitchen to get something to drink. My 18-year-old son is in, and he's really tall. He's 6'5". So he says, Mom, I know you got the numbers yesterday for the book. How does it look? And I looked at him and I said, I'm just really disappointed. It's just not what I thought it was going to be. I just like way lower. I just feel really, I was expressing all of this feeling to him. And he turned and he cocked his head to the side and looked at me with this perplexed face. And he said, Isn't it like the second day? And it was so great because it just snapped me right out of it.
Yeah.
Whereas before I maybe would have spent 2 months in catastrophe, I spent 1 day because when I'm in catastrophe, I'm not doing the millimeter steps of creation that actually sell books. I'm not actually doing the things that I would do to reach the goal of that number. I'm not actually engaged in creation. I'm living in a world that is not real, either fantasy or catastrophe. So, what I would say in terms of going through a transition as a tool is be very careful that you're living in the now, in the present, in today, that you are where your feet are and not in these made up stories in your head. And if you're going to tell yourself a story, you might as well tell yourself a good one, right? You might as well interpret information in a way that serves you and gives you more confidence to show up today. It's a long road to get there, but you've got to really work to stay in the now where your feet are.
I was listening to a podcast yesterday and they mentioned something like most people, they either live in the past or the future and they're not in the present. And it's once you become more self aware that you are then able to get yourself into the moment.
Yes.
And
And
then,
if you have a very vivid imagination and an active brain, you'll always go there, right?
right.
And
Yeah.
you want to be able to imagine the desired outcome. It's not bad to go there and dream about it for a second or a part of your day. It's bad when you actually move in, when you
Yes.
actually live there instead of living in the, okay, that means I would send this email, make this phone call, do this post, follow up with this person, schedule this lunch appointment. Just the tiniest little things that actually create movement.
Yeah. And I love that you use the word creation and how if you do plant yourself there in that scenario, you're preventing yourself from creating the momentum or the life that you're hoping for because, yeah,
Yeah.
you're in the,
You're not only not taking action, you're doing damage to your self esteem because my
Mm.
tirade to myself was a sucker punch to my feeling of worth and value
Yes.
and my joy in the process. I'm not going to create anything of value when I'm feeling less than, like I made a mistake, I failed. I have to then work through that to even get back to the place where I can take inspired action. So I'm not only not in motion moving forward, I'm sending myself, it's like shoots and ladders. Going down a chute and then I have to travel all that path to get back to where I was.
Yeah. And I also think your story is a good example of having people around you to help you with that perspective because when we're just in our minds so much, it's so important to have people around you that can help you see things in a way that you're not seeing them in the moment.
Totally.
Yeah.
Isn't it the second day?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, you with your 6'5", 8-year-old.
Yeah. Out of the mouth of babes, huh?
Yeah. We're large babes now.
Yeah. Which leads me into another question. Can you talk about your support system through all of your career changes that you've been experiencing?
Yes. And it's interesting. I'm so grateful to him because I often think if roles were reversed and he made some of the choices that I've made along the way, I think, oh, wow, that would be really scary. I will also say that I have the luxury of having been an entrepreneur because for our entire relationship of now 25 years, he has had a very stable job and provides all of the healthcare benefits. And that has given me the freedom to take some chances and to really make some investments that I probably wouldn't have been able to do. I always think that we talk about entrepreneurship as if it's like a right or everyone has access to it. And
Mm.
while they do in some cases, I've worked with single parents who have kids with illnesses. You got to have health care. There are just some realities that not everyone has that luxury. So I always feel grateful that I've been able to pursue other things. That being said, I also have really advocated for myself. And there are times where he would say, I'm not sure that's a good idea, or that feels like a lot of money, or are you certain on the outset? Let me give you an example. In my book, I talk a lot about unpaid labor, which is all of the work that largely women do that is very important in creating great families and communities, but that you don't get paid for. So, for example, we have a cookout tomorrow for my son's college basketball team. Who's buying all the supplies and making the Chinese coleslaw that we're taking? My other son came downstairs today wearing pants that are 3 inches too short because today was the first day he wore pants. I was like, oh, I'm no pants, right? So who's buying the pants? Me. Who I got a bill yesterday from the dentist, and it was to our old address where we lived 3 years ago. So who's calling the dentist to tell them, "Hey, we have a new address?" All of that is unpaid labor, and that's not even to mention, like, the cooking and the cleaning and the all of that kind of stuff, right? I've both been an advocate and I've learned to ask for what I need from my husband, Ryan, in terms of if I'm doing the dishes after dinner and he's laying on the couch and I'm feeling resentful, saying to him, "Hey, I need help,"
Yeah.
not assuming that he should know or being mad because he doesn't see me slamming pots and pans around,
Yeah.
angrily wanting him to get off the couch, right? Like, I need to just be able to say, "Hey, I need you to come in here and help me clean the kitchen." And he'll be like, "Oh, okay." He's not gonna just say no. Okay. So all that to say, along the way, I've hired a lot of people to help me with unpaid labor because I knew I couldn't build the businesses I wanted to and do all of that unpaid labor. Women do about 7 years worth of unpaid labor in their lifetime. That's the latest statistic, which is as long as it takes to get a bachelor's and a master's degree, right?
Mm.
Okay. Ryan was raised by a very frugal parent and he'll say, I'll just do it. I don't want to spend the money to hire someone to clean, help with laundry for a while when our kids were younger to help with food preparation, just chopping things. And
Yeah.
so I've learned with him to just say, give me a trial period of 3 months. And if at the end of the 3 months, you do not feel in favor of this additional support for a family, I'll get rid of it. We'll set a date right now. We'll go out to dinner in 3 months, check in. So I learned to like baby step him into supporting me in ways when he wasn't sure or he would just rather not spend the money.
Yeah.
Because let's be clear, he's not going to do it. I'm not waiting until we have no clothes to wear to do the laundry. That does not make me feel
Yeah.
good about how things are happening at our house. So I just knew I had to hire someone and that once I did it, he wouldn't really care that much and he would forget about it. Had to like take the leap and just say, we're doing it. So I do feel like I've done a really great job of getting the support I need, even when there was resistance, and then being really clear about what I needed from him. Tonight, really need help with the dishes. The kitchen has exploded. Tonight, we are going to get the kids. We're going to do a full cleanup of this space. He would then be like, okay, tonight we're going to do that. I had to really learn to use my voice and just feel resentful and frustrated. So,
I love that. I think that's a great example that could help somebody figure out the best way to navigate their relationship with their family or their significant other, and to be able to take pieces from that and start maybe just speaking up or asking for what you need. And
not
it's
assuming he should know.
exactly, I can relate so much to that. Like my mom was just telling me a story. She had guests recently, and one of them was putting towels on the furniture, and she didn't want to say anything
Mhm.
to ruffle feathers. And her sister was like, no, say something. You need to communicate. And I'm like, oh, this is where I get it from.
If you can't communicate that, then you also lose the right to feel frustrated about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Something
just
to,
make assumptions that people know what we want and need.
yeah, exactly. And it's definitely a habit we might have that we need to just start practicing a change one little step at a time. But so I want to ask you about in your bio, you said that you help leaders and business professionals understand how deeply thought habits impact every part of their work and lives. And I thought that was an interesting phrase, deeply thought habits. Can you talk a little bit more about what that means and how it relates to your coaching that you do?
Yeah. So about 80% of our thinking is happening at a subconscious level. And we only are 20% conscious. So all the things that we're doing subconsciously, thankfully, breathing and all of those things, we're not thinking about them. They're just happening. But we also have a series of habits of thinking, these grooves in our brain that when we go down these grooves, they create resistance. We have a risk of falling into certain habits of thinking that keep us from moving forward into what I call creation. So, creation may be parenting your children like you want to, building the business you want to, creating the career opportunities that you want to. So I'll give you an example of one habit of thinking leans toward often obligation. This habit says, I have to, I need to, I should.
Mm.
The more you repeat that habit of thinking, it is showing up in so many places, but you aren't consciously aware of it. Let's say you're building a business right now. There's natural resistance to building a business. Imagine climbing a mountain. You get out of breath, there's exertion. The same for building a business. It takes energy, it takes effort, it takes investment of time and really focus. So there's an exertion. This habit of thinking, have to, need to, should, is as if you are strapping on a 100-pound backpack to climb the mountain.
Mm.
You're going to climb the mountain either way, but by having this habit of thinking happening below the surface, you're making it so much harder and more draining than it needs to be. So, these habits of thinking in the assessment tool called the Habit Finder, which you can take for free on my website, it takes a picture of all of those subconscious habits of thinking. And it actually gives you a chance to look at them because most of them we aren't even aware that they're there. And to look at them and see, oh, and once you have this awareness, you start to notice that you're saying, "I have to take out the garbage. I really should go to the gym. I really need to pay the bills." And it's pervasive. It's everywhere that this habit of thinking is just draining your energy. And so the work I do is let's observe that. And then let's choose a different thought, which is I get to. I choose to. I want to.
Mhm.
I get to type up the copy for this email that's going to go out to my client. I choose to go to the grocery store to purchase food to feed my family. I want to grow my business to the next level, right? I'm constantly catching myself saying need to and replacing that habit of thinking with one that just has less drag. And what happens is that they probably get up the mountain either way, they just get there a lot faster. It's just a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Like deeply thought habits, meaning the pathway, the neural pathway we've created in our brain that has now established this recurring thought that influences the choices we make every day.
Yes. And your thoughts can just easily slide right down into that groove if it's big. And so changing them is like this rewiring process that takes conscious effort and redirection. It's like I played basketball. So if you had shot the ball one way for a long time and then somebody changes your shot for a while, you have to think about doing that differently until the habit becomes subconscious. And then you just start shooting it and you have a better outcome.
Yeah. Very
Mhm.
cool. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. I'm excited to go and use your resource on your website because I think it's going to help me. I can see it helping other people.
People
um,
always say, "How did it know that?" when they
yeah.
read it? Because it rings so true, but they're
Yeah.
just like, "Oh gosh, I didn't even know, but now that I know, I do know." So,
Exactly.
yes.
So tell people about your book and where they can find you if they want to learn more from you.
Yes. So, my book is called I See You. It is a guide for women to make more, have more, and be more without more work. You can find the book anywhere books are sold. So, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, all the places you can do Kindle. And it's also on Audible. It's my voice. I recorded myself reading it. So, you can also listen to it there if you are a listener. I would also direct you to amykemp.com. I have a book tab there that has some really cool additional resources that connect to the book, including a video you can watch there. I chose 7 of the most influential women I know, and they were the first readers of the book, and it's in my living room and us talking about the book for the very first time. It's magical. So I would invite you into that conversation as well. And then, of course, social media. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Amy Kemp Inc. And I would love to have you jump on there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amy. It's been a pleasure and a joy. And I'm so grateful that you are here today and for all the valuable information that you share. So thank
Thanks,
you.
Brittany.
Thank you so much for tuning in today, and a huge thank you to our guest for sharing such valuable insights. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback helps others discover the podcast, and it means the world to me as I continue to bring you content that supports your career change journey. If today's conversation resonated with you and you're feeling stuck in a career that doesn't fulfill you anymore, I'm here to help. My one-on-one career coaching program is designed specifically for women who are ready to break free from the grind and discover a career that truly excites them. In our sessions, we'll uncover what's holding you back, identify your true passions, and create a clear, actionable plan to transition you into a career that aligns with your deepest values. You can get in touch with me directly at shiftyourdayjob@gmail.com, or you can connect with me on social media at shiftyourdayjob. I'd love to hear from you and support you on this journey. Until next time, I'm your host, Brittany Cates, and together, let's shift your day job.